I'm William Googe, a Vury collaborator and professional ultra runner from the UK. I love to tackle endurance runs around the world, including a 55-day, 3,064-mile run across the US. So I know a thing or two about performance wear. When it comes to relaxing, I look for something ultra versatile and comfy. The Ponto Performance Jogger from Vury is perfect for all of those things. It's the comfiest jogger I've ever worn. And the DreamKnit fabric is why I'll always reach for them over other joggers. Check them out in the DreamKnit collection by going to vury.com/William. That's VUORI.com/William, where new customers can receive 20% off their first order. Plus, enjoy free shipping in the US on orders over $75 and free returns. Exclusions apply. Visit the website for full terms and conditions.
Acura's all-new ADX, a compact SUV that isn't just built for one thing. It's precision-crafted for everything. To escape the grind with available all-wheel drive. To go with your flow with available Google built-in.
Hey Google, turn it up.
Okay, turning up the volume. And crafted to be heard with an available Bang & Olufsen premium sound system. The all-new Acura ADX, crafted to match your energy. Acura, precision-crafted performance.
Take your vibes and go, 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 go.
Google is a trademark of Google LLC.
The Reverend Dr. William Barber has been arrested a lot. He's been arrested in North Carolina, where he used to lead the NAACP, and his advocacy for access to health care led to sit-ins and charges of trespassing. His daughter's been arrested at the North Carolina General Assembly. His wife, too. The first time he was arrested in Washington, D.C. was back in 2016. The most recent time, well, that was last month. I'm kind of curious. How do you prepare to be arrested?
You don't.
This recent arrest, it was for quietly praying in the Capitol Rotunda.
We are here crying to you, O God, because we've heard the cries of your people.
His group, the Repairers of the Breach, recorded the entire thing.
When you walk around in the rotunda, people are talking, right? We didn't go in and chant loud. We didn't block doors. We went in to pray.
To be clear, this was not an apolitical prayer. The GOP's Big Beautiful Reconciliation Bill, Reverend Barber calls it a great big ugly bill. He and a few other faith leaders came with prepared remarks.
We have also read the budget resolution of this Congress, which calls for $1.5 trillion in cuts to life-saving and life-sustaining programs in order to give a tax break to billionaires.
Deliver us, O Lord,
Never.
from the deceptive lie that says our nation will be better off if those who have little get less and those who have too much get more.
Against the conspiracy.
And at some point, they came up to us and said, we warn you that you have to cease and desist.
Warnings have been given. If you do not want to be arrested, you must leave the area. Move outside that area.
They didn't say if you pray less or pray more quiet, just stop praying. We didn't, and they gave us 3 warnings. 2 or 3 of the people stepped back, and then they cleared the room, brought in 20-some officers, and put us in handcuffs.
Even the press got cleared from the rotunda at this point. That left a dozen or so officers and a few middle-aged faith leaders, including Reverend Barber.
Keep moving back. Is there a reason why you're closing the door? It's a police line.
It's a police line?
Yeah.
Now understand that not a few months before we went in to pray, the Republicans, the MAGA Republicans in the current Congress had someone come in, pray and sing and have a service for quite some time, 45 minutes or an hour.
Some cynical people, I think, would say, oh, the image of you getting arrested is powerful. And so it's part of what the protests are about. They're about showing people in full clerical garb being detained.
We go to arrest the attention of the nation, whether we're standing there, and hopefully to arrest the attention of the Congress people to say, do you realize what you're doing? We represent the people who will die. We will have to bear it because of the bad public policy. If someone says, if you don't stop praying, we will arrest you, then our response to that is, then you proceed with what you want to do. If that's what you're going to do. But what we're not going to do is stop praying.
Today on the show, Reverend Dr. Barber on why he refuses to stop praying. As the GOP's reconciliation bill makes its way through Congress, will it make a difference? I'm Mary Harris. You're listening to What Next? Stick around. This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today. Smart choice. Progressive loves to help people make smart choices. That's why they offer a tool called Auto Quote Explorer that allows you to compare your Progressive car insurance quote with rates from other companies. So you save time on the research and can enjoy savings when you choose the best rate for you. Give it a try after this episode at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. Not everyone is careful with your personal information, which might explain why there's a victim of identity theft every 5 seconds in the U.S. Fortunately, there's LifeLock. LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points a second for threats to your identity. If your identity is stolen, a U.S.-based restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year by visiting lifelock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
So you were arrested this year as part of your Moral Mondays movement you've been organizing at the Capitol. But when I dug in, I was actually surprised to learn how long Moral Mondays have been going on. Like, you began this project years ago in North Carolina, where you are, and it really sort of gained steam in 2012, 2013. Is that right? Can you just explain where the idea came from?
We had been engaged in North Carolina since 2007. In fact, we started when Democrats went in office to challenge the state government on issues of poverty, voting rights, living wages, funding public education. In 2012, an extremist majority took over the state legislature. We call it the Tea Party extremism.
Yeah, Republicans got a trifecta, right? It was like the first time since the 1800s in North Carolina.
Right. And that happened because in 2010, the Justice Department approved a race-driven redistricting plan that we opposed when I was president of the North Carolina NAACP, and later on would be able to prove it was unconstitutional. But in 2012, they used that redistricting to create not just a majority, but a veto-proof majority. They began in January of 2013, going after everything. The first thing they did was they went after Medicaid expansion and said no to 500,000 North Carolinians, 350,000 white, 150,000 black, 30,000 who were even veterans. They said no. And it went downhill from there. We mobilized tens of thousands of people in the street. We went to hearings. They shut down having hearings. They didn't want to hear from the public. And here's the quick story. After doing all of their policy damage, the legislators, Republican extremist legislators in North Carolina, passed a bill, Senate bill, the computer called it 666.
Really?
That's what I said when I heard. But it was goal was to undo 40 different aspects of voting rights in North Carolina.
Huh.
At that point, we said, we can't wait any further. We have to go inside the legislature. And we didn't, again, go in to get arrested. We went inside to the rotunda between the Senate and the House to read scripture, to read the Constitution, and to challenge. And they arrested us. And the lady that got arrested first was a woman in a wheelchair who had multiple sclerosis, who said, I'm here because I have health care. I have the means to have it, but I can't watch this legislature do what they're doing to people who need it. And the next week it grew. We didn't even have a plan, necessarily for the next week. The people, the spirit of it took on. And by 2014, we had called for a gathering, and more, according to U.S. News Today, more than 80,000 people showed up on a Saturday. But as it grew from April 28th, from 100 people joining to thousands of people every Monday.
Creating this Moral Monday movement required coalition building. To this day, Reverend Barber talks about what he calls fusion politics, uniting people of all kinds of different backgrounds, including different political parties, with a shared moral code.
What we say is there are areas, we say, that systemic racism, systemic poverty, ecological devastation, denial of health care, the war economy, and the false moral narrative of religious nationalism are contrary to our deepest religious values. And when policy is done from those perspectives, they need to be challenged, which is why about 30% of the people that ended up getting arrested during Moral Mondays when it began, the first year, over 2,000 people, were Republican.
Huh. I mean, you tell a story about a few years in to your protest movement, North Carolina was refusing to expand access to Medicaid as part of President Obama's healthcare reform. You were keeping track of how that was impacting rural North Carolinians. And you found the story of this woman named Porsche Gibbs, who died in 2014. She lives in a rural area. She needed emergency attention, and her local hospital had closed because her local hospital relied on Medicaid.
That's right. Team went down to Belhaven, eastern North Carolina, rural North Carolina. There was a hospital there that had been existing for 50-some years. It was brought into existence when the government decided that these hospitals could get funding, and the hospital had saved a lot of lives. And the first person that died when they closed that hospital was a young lady named Porsche Gibbs. I had met her and met her husband.
You'd met them?
I met them. And she had a heart attack after the hospital was closed. And she had to wait in a parking lot. Her family there with her, because if she was 5 minutes from the hospital if it had been open. But instead, the hospital was over an hour away, and it went too long, and she died. And medical person after medical person said that if that hospital had been there, it's more than likely she would have lived. And we began to track how many rural hospitals and inner city hospitals, whether you're in Appalachia or Alabama, have closed because of the denial of health care. And with millions of people who need health care were denied what millions of other Americans were receiving. And how many have died?
That work seems so important to me because it can seem so bloodless, what's happening in Congress.
Exactly.
And you've actually called what happened with Porsche and other people who couldn't get insurance or whose hospitals closed, you called it policy murder, which I think is an interesting turn of phrase because I don't think people think of the choices in Washington affecting individuals in the way that you tried to make clear with Porsche's case.
Well, every bad policy dealing with racism, dealing with healthcare and environment has a death measurement. And new scholarship has come that shows that 800 people die a day from the effects of poverty and low wages. 800 people a day. That's all over 250,000 a year. And why I say policy murder is because it's a phrase that comes actually out of the 19th century. If you know that that something you're going to do will cause some people to die, that's in essence premeditated. It's not that you don't know, you know, and there's no reason to be blocking this policy, but you're just being mean-spirited or whatever reason you're choosing to do it.
You know, North Carolina eventually expanded Medicaid access just a couple years ago.
Well, when a Democratic governor got in and the pressure continued, even Republicans started seeing that they were hurting their own people. And there was a push to expand health care because not only does denying health care create death, but how many people died during COVID because they didn't have access to health care? There was a study that was done that said upwards of 50 to 60% of the people during COVID may have died from the lack of health care rather than from COVID itself.
Yeah.
I met a lady, she was from Alabama. She developed COVID, but was afraid to go to the hospital because she did not have insurance. So she held out, hoping it was a cold. Finally, she got rushed to the emergency room. And she called me while she was in there and said, I won't make it, but please keep fighting because this is just wrong.
Oh, no.
It is wrong.
Did she make it?
No, she died. She died. Yeah.
I mean, when you look at the budget reconciliation bill, which uses a bunch of mechanisms to try to cut funding for Medicaid, you must think about all these people whose stories live in your head.
In my head, my eyes, my heart, people that are in the movement, but having been a pastor, I had to bury people who didn't have sufficient health care. And we're talking about now 13 million people losing Medicaid. And think about what we're talking about. We're talking about the elderly. We're talking about disabled people. We're talking about low-income people. We're talking about children who have kidney disease, renal disease that's life-ending, children with Lou Gehrig's disease. What we need to be doing in this moment, I believe, is putting all of this up everywhere so that this doesn't just get discussed as a budget bill, but as a moral bill, an immoral bill that's impacting lives. We should be putting the numbers out there. We should be putting what kind of death could come out of this. We should be showing the faces. One of the greatest wrongs of this moment is to see the legislature, the Senate, the House, this current majority, get up, open every morning with prayer, P-R-A-Y, and then engage in trying to pass policies in the middle of the night that pray, P-R-E-Y, on the most vulnerable of our society.
We'll be back after a quick break. This episode is brought to you by Discover. It's smart to always have a few financial goals. And here's a really smart one you can set: earning cash back on what you buy every day. With Discover, you can. Get this. Discover automatically matches all the cash back you've earned at the end of your first year. Seriously, all of it. Discover trusts you to make smart decisions. After all, you listen to this podcast. See terms at discover.com/creditcard.
PMS, pregnancy, menopause. Being a woman is a lot. Ollie supports you and yours with expert solutions for every age and life stage. They just launched 2 new products exclusively at Walmart. Period Hero combats bloat, mood swings, and more during PMS. And Balance Perimeno to support hormonal balance, mood, and metabolism during perimenopause. Grab yours at ollie.com. Ollie! These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
This episode is brought to you by Factor. Optimize your nutrition this year with Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal service. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved, ready to eat in just 2 minutes. Choose from 40 weekly options across 8 dietary preferences like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Eat smarter at factormeals.com/listen50 and use code listen50 for 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Factormeals.com/listen50, code listen50. T's and C's apply.
You're a Protestant minister, but I am struck by the fact that not every religious leader is seeing morality in the way that you do in this moment. Like, just as an example, I was reading this interview with Albert Mohler, who's the longtime president of the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary. And he seems to be talking a lot recently about the sin of empathy. And I wanted to talk to you about that because I really notice this in my everyday life. I notice, from Elon Musk saying empathy is a great weakness to even a religious leader like this talking about empathy in this way. What do you make of this conversation?
It is the conversation that has been the struggle of faith and religion since the days that Moses challenged Pharaoh, but Pharaoh had his own religious people that would tell him what he wanted to hear and would attempt to bless his injustices. It's the same struggle with Jesus, who cared about the poor, but the Pharisees and others who wanted to steal from the poor. It's the same struggle when Frederick Douglass said of slave master religion, To love the faith of Jesus is to hate the religion of the slave master. It's the same struggle that Cruz writes about in his book, One Nation Under God. And he talks about how during the days of Roosevelt, there were those who hated the New Deal so much that they actually put money together, many corporate forces, money, oil money, manufacturing money, and hired someone to go out and create, if they will, an alternative gospel that could basically say that any movement of the government to help people was in fact sinful because it did not allow people to suffer from their personal moral failures.
Whoa.
But you have to counter to that, which is a social gospel movement. Like, what would Jesus do if he saw people walking around without health care, without children, without child labor laws, so forth and so on? It's the same struggle of those who claim to burn crosses at Klan rallies and claimed they were being Christian versus the Dr. King and other religious persons of faith and Rabbi Heschel, who declared that they had to put legs on their prayers and challenge the sinfulness of racism. It is not a new struggle.
That's interesting. Do you ever run into some of these other religious leaders you're so opposed to in the wild and debate these theological issues?
They won't do it. We've asked, actually, since you asked that question, we actually, myself and Jonathan Hotgrove, who's my co-editor of the book I just wrote called White Poverty, we challenged Jerry Falwell's son and other them to a debate that we would come to Liberty University, and they would not do it. And here's the problem. White so-called evangelical and religious nationalism, the fundamental problem is they are committed to a corrupt view of the flag and not the moral, just view of the cross. They will say things like the man said, the sin of empathy, but he can't find a scripture to back that up. He surely can't find it in the mouth of Jesus, who was the most empathetic and caring person on the face of the earth. So what you have is, at best, is theological malpractice, at worst, heresy.
So I want to talk about what happens now in Washington and with your movement. You know, it looks like in the next few days, Congress may pass this reconciliation bill. Then it goes to the Senate. In terms of protest, I feel like one of the next big moments will be June 14th, when Donald Trump is planning a military parade, and it's also his birthday. I know that you spoke at the last, sort of big gathering, the Hands Off rally in April. What do you most want to communicate at this moment? And do you think opposition leaders are rising to the occasion?
I think more and more people are rising. I think the more and more people know, what's going on. Part of the problem is so many people have not known. It's just beginning to really be pushed out into the media of what's really going on. And so I believe big day is going to be June 2nd, when we're asked clergy and impacted people to come, investments come, if you're impacted, if you're disabled, not just about the Medicaid part of the budget, but if you're concerned about education, if you're concerned about all of the money they want to put now into deporting people, we have to put a face on it. We have to engage in massive nonviolent resistance. We cannot be afraid to do that. Moral leaders must do it in the pulpit and out of the pulpits.
But I worry about it. I worry that people don't have the stomach for it. I think a lot of people, you've already been arrested, right? And I think the deeper we get into this administration, the riskier it will be to oppose whatever the agenda is.
But this is what my hope is. I'm not positive. I'm hopeful in this sense. The next week, people came just recently. It wasn't just me getting arrested. I was on a call last night where people are planning on moving, and they're coming to arrest the attention of the nation. Our gathering, if you look at the list of all of the different organizations that have signed on, we've got denominational leaders like Terry Horton with the Christian Church Disciples of Christ, nearly 800,000 members, 5,000 churches. Never before has signed on to something like this, and has. I just spoke to Jewish women. They have a massive gathering in D.C. the other day. And what we're talking about is people coming, and I believe they will come. Remember, we are in a country where many times when we thought it was the end of a movement, something else happened. I'll give you a quick story. In 1852, the Dred Scott decision came down. The abolitionists thought it was all over. Even Frederick Douglass got depressed. But in the midst of that, Sojourner Truth asked him, was God dead? He rose up from that, did a speech in May. And here's what he said. He said, as monstrous as these decisions are, history is studied with proof that every attempt to stop the abolition movement has only served to intensify and embolden our efforts. Over and over again in history, what we have seen is that moments come like this. This is the gut check moment for this country. This moment, next year's election, are gut check moments. And I believe that a remnant of people are going to stand up in this moment. Now is the time. We don't have time to wait, because this budget and its impact is going to hurt everybody.
Reverend Dr. Barber, I'm really grateful for your time. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much.
Reverend Dr. William J. Barber II is the pastor of Greenleaf Christian Church, Disciples of Christ, in Goldsboro, North Carolina. He's also a professor at Yale Divinity School. And that's the show. What Next is produced by Paige Osburn, Elena Schwartz, Rob Gunther, Anna Phillips, Ethan Oberman, and Madeline Ducharme. Ben Richmond is the Senior Director of Podcast Operations here at Slate. And I'm Mary Harris. Go track me down on Blue Sky. Say, hey, I'm at Mary Harris. Thanks for listening. Catch you back here next time.